I think we need some kind of anti-corruption task force. We need something to deal with the ultra wealthy, ultra privileged elites, the royal families of this country who exploit the system, who flood the zone with cash, subverting the will of working class Americans. I don't care for the elites. I don't care for the millionaires and the billionaires. I especially don't care for the Democrats nor the Republican establishment. Something interesting happened in the past several years where the conservatives, I should say the Republican Party, finally saw a populist wave. I don't understand why left-wing populists are so angry about this. We mostly agree on the wealthy elites being a problem. Granted, conservatives still hold true to several values, like they don't think taxing the rich for the most part solves the problem because then you just give the government money. I agree with that. But I do think we need something, because check out this story. Governor Cuomo is snowed under an avalanche of scandals. As new reports claim, he offered his family special access to COVID-19 tests at the height of the pandemic. That's right. Andrew Cuomo gave his family special access. He also killed 15,000 people. Wrapped up in this scandal is not just the embroiled, embattled governor, awful governor, by the way, but CNN, because CNN defended Chris Cuomo, their anchor, getting access to this vaccine. So let me tell you, I'll keep this part light, but I want to say, I've been tweeting recently like tax the rich as kind of just like a blanket whatever statement. There's so much missing context to what that really means. And there are many people on the right who are like, I don't know about this. And many libertarians are like, I don't know about this. And I'm like, dude, I'm not saying a good, hardworking person who creates a great product and has a company and hires staff is who we want to punish. What I'm trying to say when I talk about taxing the rich, for one, it's meant to be kind of just a blanket virtue jab that means nothing, but for some reason people hoot about. But I will tell you this definitively. By all means, Cuomo, his brother, CNN, these powerful institutions, the millionaires and the billionaires subverting our government, people like Tom Steyer dumping tens of millions of dollars to ban guns and violate our rights. Why would anyone support these people in any capacity? Here's my joke. Tax the rich, give all the money to Elon Musk, because he's building spaceships. My point is not necessarily that taxes solve anything, not necessarily that it's morally correct, just that we need some kind of, I don't know, corruption task force. I don't care if you're rich. I don't want to take anything from you. I'm particularly well off, and I don't think I should just give up all of my resources to people like Cuomo. The real problem is not the rich, and I hope the left realizes this. The real problem is corrupt, crony, corporatist politicians who pretend to be on the left. But we got to do something about this. I'm not going to pretend to have all the answers, my friends. So by all means, feel free to disagree with me. But I will tell you, the idea that Michael Bloomberg can dump, what did he dump? Like several $100 million, like $500 million into the election. Congratulations, Republicans. That's the money that helped Democrats retain control of the House. They flood this market with all of this cash, making it impossible for regular Americans to compete. In the end, what will happen is the populist left that, for the most part, still falls in line with the Democratic establishment supporting Joe Biden are going to lend their power to the establishment that will then take away our rights. It's the stupidest thing ever. You can look at these Twitter accounts where it's like Biden voters posting their L's online, their losses. And there's people like, I can't believe he's reopened these child migrant facilities. Look, I'm not going to blame the dumb people who got duped by the establishment and the corporate Democrats, but I'm at least going to point out that they lend their power in this capacity. We need something to deal with the corruption. These people like the Cuomos. I tell you this, man. Check out this story from Business Insider. They say, Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York has had a bad year, and the hits just keep coming. Cuomo, after building a national profile by offering a semblance of reassurance during the early days of the pandemic, is now watching his image and political career quickly erode. Yeah, because he's a scumbag. They say, amid a slew of misconduct allegations, a federal investigation into his administration's undercounting of nursing home COVID-19 deaths, and reports of a structurally unsafe bridge named after his father, Cuomo now faces a fourth major controversy. The third-term governor is accused of arranging special access to state-administered coronavirus tests for his family members and other high-profile figures as the pandemic battered New York early last year. This story perfectly exemplifies exactly what I've been saying. Many people on the left blindly hooted and hollered, cheering on CNN and Andrew Cuomo. And now we're learning just how depraved they really are and how screwed up Joe Biden is. Maybe you weren't happy with Trump's policies, but to act like Joe Biden was better was always the stupidest thing I had ever heard. No, I'm sorry. Donald Trump was the better choice. That's just a sad reality for a lot of people. Here's what I think happened, though. We saw 9 million people moved from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party to vote for Trump. People who had never voted for moved over and voted for Trump, and they recognized that Trump was the better of the options because at least he was populist. Now, the left doesn't like the right wing, and they hate right wing more than they like the idea of populist, which is insane to me. And that's where this really comes down. When I look at the political battlefield, I think populist first and foremost is the most important thing. How many of you watching this are like millionaires or billionaires and are really concerned about what might happen to your income? Probably not very many of you. You won't expect to be taxed in this regard. But I'm sure many of you principally reject the idea that the government could take people's resources. That I respect. I don't like the government having this power. However, I have to look at the choices we have and then come to the conclusion that populist comes first. If someone is on the left and they're pro-gun, and the left populists are absolutely pro-gun, the socialists literally pro-gun, then I think we have more in common with them than we do with the corporate establishment elites. Now, I don't know ultimately where you go from there, but I don't like the idea that Tom Steyer, Michael Bloomberg, George Soros, you name it, have been flooding our system and winning. This is what I got to say, too. It's like, they like to accuse me of being conservative and all that. I'm like, look at what Cuomo is doing. He's killing people. He's giving his family special access. Oh, they support it anyway. But here's my main point. I've always been in favor of regulating out of control corporations. I've never been a fan of government corruption, and I think it needs to be weeded out. I don't understand where's that why can't we just be for the people? And that means maybe we won't agree on the solutions, but we can certainly agree F people like Cuomo and Bloomberg and Soros and the Koch brothers and anybody else who wants to manipulate our political space and subvert the will of actual Americans. I tend to find, myself politically in the middle. I see, back in the day, the Democrats advocating for controls on immigration that they don't anymore. Now I see Joe Biden getting attacked by the left over the child migrant facilities. And I'm like, well, what should they do, man? I said the same thing under Trump. What should they do? My problem is the corruption. I don't have all the solutions, man. I don't know all the answers. But I look at some of what the left says and the right says, and I'm like, there's good ideas on both sides. Can we take both of those sets of good ideas and get rid of the bad ideas and then do something about these ultra elites that are destroying our system? Honestly, man, I don't have the answers. I really don't, because I'm worried that, the idea of taxing the rich ultimately just results in the government having too much power. There are, I think, 600 or so billionaires in this country, like 18,000 millionaires or so. And so there's more rich people than there are people in government. I don't trust people in government either. I don't want either sector to have a monopoly on power. So what do? Do we just fight? The problem then is so long as we're fighting amongst ourselves, the ultra elites like Cuomo will literally kill people and they will get away with it. I give you one of the best tweets. Michael Malice, you get way too many shout outs from me, but you deserve it. He said, white mass murderers never get wounded by the police and rarely even get prosecuted. And it's a photograph of Andrew Cuomo and Gretchen Whitmer. Bravo. I am sick to my stomach looking at these Democrat politicians who murdered people and they get away with it. They get away with it. What do we do? I tweeted, tax Hollywood elites 90%, and a bunch of conservatives were like, okay, we're good with that one. And then some leftists were like, he doesn't really want to tax the rich. He just wants to go after Hollywood. I'm like, it's a compromise, isn't it? You want to tax the rich? We'll start with them. How about that? We'll start somewhere. Now, these Democrats who killed all these people, we going to arrest them? That's what I'm sick of. Let's stop fighting with each other and start focusing on the corrupt nobility, these royal family types, these people who think they're deserving of this power over you, who would destroy your lives, destroy your business, lie to our faces and kill people. And I'm not just talking about the politicians. I'm talking about CNN too. I just don't like the establishment. So here's what I see with this whole left and right debate, libertarian or otherwise. Everyone is mostly just angry with corruption from the ultra elites. So maybe taxing isn't the right answer. Maybe the right answer is arresting the corrupt. It just doesn't happen. And that's the big problem. We're slipping back into this idea of just nobles, the Cuomo family. This is an article from Glenn Greenwald. I'll show you a little bit of it. CNN's defense of Chris Cuomo's special COVID privileges is grotesque. How can a media outlet credibly claim to denounce abuse of power by political officials when they defend and glorify their own anchor's participation in it? Because, Glenn, they are deceivers, manipulators. They are the corrupt establishment. They weaponize the political class so that they can make money and make themselves rich, and their friends fund it. You know, it's funny, though. The way I see the whole problem is Cuomo is the pawn and puppet of these ultra elite billionaires and millionaires. I'm proud of you if you've made a lot of money. My business is doing very well, and we're looking to expand. We want to launch new shows and new series. But I take a look at, my company and what I do. And I take a look at other individuals who have become successful through independent work and journalism, though they're few. And I'm like, good. If you make a good product, maybe you sold a pillow. Congratulations. People like the pillow. You got rich. That's what it's supposed to be about. That's why I'm a capitalist, because I believe that an individual who is smart, driven, and successful has a right to expand upon these ideas, offer up jobs and opportunities, and that decentralized trade and economic system results in prosperity. However, we are being torn apart by people like the Cuomos, by the Pelosi's, by the Schumers, by Mitch McConnell. What do we do? It's a tough question. Glenn Greenwald writes, ever since the COVID pandemic subsumed most countries on the planet, there have been numerous scandals and controversies relating to those who corruptly obtain medical privileges and other exemptions unavailable to ordinary citizens. These scandals typically arise when someone uses their wealth, power, or connections to jump in front of others for access to potentially life-saving procedures or medications, or grant themselves and their friends license to ignore what everyone else must endure. Right now in Brazil, for instance, there's a burgeoning scandal from reports that a group of business people with ties to the government arranged to purchase their own private stash of vaccines for use for themselves, families and friends, in violation of the law. In the U.S., people were outraged when very young members of Congress were among the first to receive the vaccine, although the law permitted them to do so. Those young Congress members justified their line jumping on the ground that they were doing so selflessly to encourage others. Meanwhile, other members of Congress refused this privilege on the ground, as Rep. Ilhan Omar put it, that it is shameful for young lawmakers to believe they are more important than workers. Repeatedly in the U.S., politicians were caught exempting themselves from lockdown orders they were imposing on everyone else. That's what I'm mad about. Can I get just like everybody to come together and be like the corrupt establishment and ultra wealthy elites are siphoning away the resources from the working class through the International Monetary Fund and things like the Federal Reserve? And these are problems, whether you're on the left or the right. I don't know, man. Glenn writes, but those pale in comparison to the abuse of power by Governor Andrew Cuomo, Democrat of New York, and his brother, CNN host Chris Cuomo. As reported on Wednesday by the Albany Times-Union and the Washington Post, high-level members of the State Department of Health were directed last year by Governor Andrew Cuomo and Health Commissioner Dr. Howard Zucker to conduct prioritized coronavirus testing on the governor's relatives, as well as influential people with ties to the administration, reported the Times-Union. Members of Cuomo's family, including his brother, his mother, and at least one of his sisters, were also tested by top health department officials, some several times, it added. In particular, Governor Cuomo abused state resources to ensure that his then 49-year-old brother, Chris, received fast COVID testing at a time when tests were very scarce. The CNN anchor was swabbed by a top New York Department of Health doctor who visited his Hamptons home to collect samples from him and his family, the Post reported. The article also contains these damning details. Quote, the same doctor who tested Chris Cuomo, Eleanor Adams, now a top advisor to the state health commissioner, also was enlisted to test multiple other Cuomo family members. The coronavirus test specimens were then rushed, at times driven by state police troopers, to the Wadsworth Center, a state public health lab in Albany, where they were processed immediately, the people said, At times, employees in the state health laboratory were kept past their shifts until late into the night to process results of those close to Cuomo, two people said. All of this commandeering of state resources to provide the CNN host with very specialized medical attention occurred while, quote, media reports were full of accounts from New Yorkers desperate to get tested, including some with symptoms and recent travel history who were turned away because of scarcity. Donald Trump was not the insane, corrupt zealot the media painted him out to be. In fact, it was the exact opposite. Trump, being an imperfect individual, to put it very, very mildly, was doing a pretty decent job. His policies weren't perfect, but still, I genuinely believe that Donald Trump was trying to help this country out. And they didn't want him to, because the whole time it's been the corrupt establishment who has been destroying, manipulating, and extracting our resources. And therein lies the big problem. I hear from the left. They say capitalism is bad. They say, capitalism is the exploitation of the working class to enrich the privileged few. And I hear from the right when they say the same thing of the left. Socialism is the privileged few exploiting the working class and taking their resources. Neither side is wrong. It's just the issue. Well, actually, I'll put it this way. I think the right is more right. But both are pointing out corruption. So when they say the systems don't work, I'll put it this way. Every single attempt at socialism has failed, okay? That's an important metric to go by when we're talking about what's the best way to run things. Because you centralize power and you make it very easy for corrupt crony elites to seize power. Now, laissez-faire capitalism, and a lot of the libertarian capitalist types don't agree with me on this one, does devolve into oligarchy. Just look at what happened in Ukraine. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, that's not true. Okay, fine. Say it's not real capitalism. Say that, and the communists will say communist countries weren't real communism. The reality is that there needs to be some mix in favor of free enterprise. You still need regulation. You still need a referee. I don't think we in this country do it perfectly. But in Ukraine, what happened after the fall of the Soviet Union is that there were no rules. And so people just gobbled up these companies, mostly by force, so sure, not necessarily capitalism. But without proper enforcement and a coalition of individuals to protect against it, it was very easy to seize many factories. And then people became ultra-wealthy oligarchs, which in effect turn into autocracy. Again, I don't have all the answers. I'm a fan of the American system, and I think America gets it pretty well. For all the problems we're facing now, I think we've done a pretty damn good job over these past several hundred years. We don't want an absolutely free market system. Absolutely, in the sense that anyone can buy or sell anything they want, because some things I think we all agree on probably shouldn't be sold, notably people, right? So there has to be some restriction. Hence, ultimate far right, ANCAP stuff. I'm not in certain agreement with. I understand the argument then is slavery is a violation of the non-aggression principle. Sure. But I don't think it makes sense to be selling, drugs to kids or things like that, in which case we need regulations and we need laws. I also think we need to stop. A really good example of the problems right now we face. The media is allowed to lie to people all day, left and right. Big tech is allowed to censor anyone they want. No, we need some regulations. We need to say to big tech, you've monopolized the commons, and conservatives have a right to post and speak, which means the truth is closer to the middle, man. How do we deal with the ultra elites like Cuomo? How do we strip him of power? The dude should be in prison. His brother should be fired, but it doesn't happen. Socialists and communists think that once the good-natured party members show up, they'll arrest these corrupt cronies and go make them break rocks. It's not going to happen that way. They're going to use the power, manipulate the system, and then it's you who ends up breaking rocks. I suppose there are many laissez-faire capitalists who think, yeah, well, they're allowed to do it. And I'm like, I disagree. I don't like the idea of Soros, Steyer, and Bloomberg dumping billions of dollars into our political space to ban guns, which is what they do. How do you compete against that? Taxation isn't necessarily the key, because then you just give the government money and they're the ones who are literally passing the laws to ban the guns. It's tough. It is very difficult. I lean in favor of progressive tax to curtail the power of these individuals and give more voice to the working class. I don't think it's a perfect solution, because then we have a problem with government. But perhaps we can then put restrictions on what government can do with that money. I don't know. I think everybody's idealistic, but I'll put it this way. I don't want to take from anybody or force anybody to do anything, which puts me in a weakened position, because then the ultra wealthy elites can pass these laws because they do believe in authoritarianism. Those of us that believe in individual liberties and libertarianism recognize the inherent problems when you go up against authoritarians. The authoritarians will lie, cheat, and steal to get whatever they want. Ultimately, in the actual libertarian left position, I can say something like, I believe taxation, taxing the rich, people like Steyer, Soros, and Bloomberg, as well as the right-wing individuals too, is a good thing. However, I don't have the authority or the right to just implement that and take people's resources away. That's what it means to be libertarian left, which is ultimately why libertarian left never scales properly and just doesn't seem to work. You try to be too nice. You ask politely. This then results in people on the left becoming authoritarians, in which case they become the very thing they're supposed to be opposing. I can tell you this. This is like the sixth story we've heard about the Cuomos being crooked and corrupt. Chris on CNN and his brother Andrew. They are awful and nasty people. How do we deal with the elites? Not just the wealthy. That's why the argument about taxing is short-sighted. Look, man, maybe I've said nothing in this whole thing other than corruption is bad. Maybe that's really it. Maybe my proposals don't make sense, but maybe we have to have a conversation on how we deal with people like this, because these people are crooks. And so long as we allow the crooks to manipulate the system, the rest of us will be worse off for it. The United States became an amazing country. We rose to power because of decentralization, because the ability of individuals to work and do it and do what they wanted and trade as they wanted. But we did encounter some problems we wanted to regulate against. And it does make some sense, notably like big tech manipulating, speech and ideas. We need to have another conversation about how we can protect to the best degree the ability of individuals to run their businesses without impediment, stopping the corrupt cronies from seizing industry and manipulating the lives of the working class and our political system. Because if we do nothing, then the political system becomes autocracy, becomes plutocracy. And I think that's where we may be. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. It's a different channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.